Hi there, it's Karen of Envisions Artistic Workshop with video number 3. In this video, we'll talk about how to apply your stencil, painting it, and then peeling away the vinyl as well. So by now, you would have already stained your board and then assembled it. The optional steps as well with maybe some dry brush technique, an extra layer of paint if you wanted the painted look, beating the board and then sanding for a more worn or distressed, real rustic look. So once you're all set and you have all those items done, you're just going to make sure everything is dust free. Now I've already applied some things just to go through the steps a little bit easier. So once you're all set here, you're going to make sure everything, and this is before the vinyl is down, making sure that the wood is all dust free, so that adhesive sticks to the sign as best that it can. So my sign, and this is a porch sign I have, "Welcome to the Olson's Home Sweet Home." So this is kind of a prototype that I'm putting together that I plan on having some optional things that you can do for the O, like as a seasonal decor, you can change that out. So this is one of the first designs on this one. So with that, you're going to, there's a few things that I would make sure that are at your fingertips. One, of course, whatever paint that you're using. Make sure it's all mixed up. I had included in the kit some stir sticks. Make sure everything's all mixed up, ready to go for the paint. Other things would be squeegee of sorts or a putty knife, making sure it's plastic, not metal, because what you are going to use that for, and I just grabbed an extra little piece of vinyl just to show you, is one, smoothing it out prior, and then once it's on here, also smoothing it out. Avoiding any bubbles that might appear close to the line of the letters, so that if there is a bubble in there, you want to make sure to smooth that out, because that's where paint can kind of seep behind there, behind the mask. If you see a bubble in the middle of the blue, not a big deal. You're never that's not going to affect the letters. So with that, moving on, so you have your squeegees, tape measure comes in handy, painter's tape, I'll show you in a little bit, and then an X-Acto knife, and of course your brushes. So be it sponge brush or whatever type of other tool you like to use for your paint, if it's a soft bristle brush, tongue twister there. So with tape measure, I like to make sure everything's all lined up on there. So with this one, I just made sure that it was the same distance from the edge to that edge right there to this edge, and then over here to over here, so that one, it's straight in the center and it doesn't go kitty wampus on you going. It's gonna, even if it's like a 1/4 inch off, then it could really affect on how you're looking at that sign, trying to read it. So making sure everything's straight when you apply it. You might want to kind of just, line it up first, figure out where you're going to put it. Now with this one, this is where that painter's tape came in handy, because I had such a long piece. It was a little cumbersome to put the whole thing on, which you can certainly split yours up too, but most likely you might only have one piece. Like I said, I split mine, and because it was such a long piece and I wanted to make sure I was, the same distance here and here, I added this onto it, and then when I pulled up, or pulled away the backing of it, I made sure that this was in place, on here, sticking to there, before I applied the ME on that, on the wood. So if that makes any sense. So one thing that you're gonna do is when you are peeling, before you put things on, you're going to pull away at the back, the white backing, not the opaque transfer paper. That's going to stay on there until, obviously you can see it on here, until you have it applied. So nice and slowly, making sure that nothing on the blue is ripping and that none of the blue pieces are coming off on here. Sometimes when you get into these little letters, you know, something like this, that some of the pieces can come off of there. So you just, if that happens, what I do is put it back down. I might scratch at it, making sure it adheres to the correct portion, and then pull up again on it nice and slowly. See how that piece came up there? That's kind of what you got to watch for. If I were to rip it off, the blue would rip. So we want to make sure going nice and slowly. Once you have that all off of there, now I'm just going to pretend that this is this now. I'm going to smooth that on there. Once it's where it is pretty pliable up into the point that I smooth it down. So if it's not lined up where you want it, you can still pick away at it and put it back down until you have it where you want it. Get that tape measure in there, make sure it's where you want it to be. Then smoothing everything down with the squeegee. Again, not too rough, just nice and smooth. You don't want to overly do it, so you don't want to take away that adhesive in the back. So, but once you're ready there, I'm going to peel away at this. And again, nice and slowly, making sure none of that blue this time is coming up with the transfer paper, and that everything is still on here and everything nice. I adhered edges, nothing's coming up for me here, so that's great news. So then pulling away at that, so that is that. Now with this one, I will show you, actually, I'm gonna just go into painting a little bit so you can kind of see different things that you can do with that. I have seen people where they blotted it. I, however, like nice, smooth brush strokes, so most likely you will need 2, maybe even 3 coats. So depending on the color, acrylic, you might even need 3 or 4 coats because it is thinner. Chalk paint is nice and thick. But so you get the idea there. I don't have to paint this whole thing for you. But when you do paint, just keep in mind, I don't want to overly, you can get it on the mask. That's not a big deal. But just keep in mind where that mask ends. You don't want to keep brushing all the way, just get messy with that, and all of a sudden you painted up on the part that doesn't have a mask. So that's just something to keep in mind. I'll let that kind of sit a little bit. This one, I feel like I had about 3 coats on there, so I think it's good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you then how to peel that away. So it's not going to come off in one piece. It's going to come off in sections. And of course, if you haven't realized by now, it's a one-time use. So peeling away at all that, that is where an X-Acto knife comes in handy. So with this one, so coming in with those little pieces of nice flat angle to the X-Acto knife, not gouging it this way, going in straight. I would try to avoid that, but go in at an angle to get it, get a flat, and then just pop all those little sections off. So you have that. If you do have some seepage, now this with the paint coming, going behind the mask, doesn't necessarily tend to happen if you apply it right on a one board piece. Where you might have some issues, I think I talked about this in video 2, is if you have an assembled sign where there's multiple boards and maybe you've got a little bit of twisting or something in one of the boards being natural wood, that's what it does. and a little lift in between each, and maybe that the stencil didn't, I guess, get behind, or I should say the paint got behind the stencil on the area that maybe was lowered, if that makes sense. So if you do have that, there's never throw away your paints and stains until you are completely done, because touch-ups can fix some of those imperfections. So if you have, say, I had some seepage that happened in here, I would just use, again, the flat, like a flat edge to this, and then just go in and kind of scrape off the goops, the big chunks of paint that you might have, and then use a little bit of smaller brush, a little bit of the touch-up paint or stain to kind of touch up that section, and then once that's dry, go in and blend it with a little bit of sandpaper. So that is that. Pretty much, I feel like I did talk about everything I wanted to with this. One thing I wanted to mention was scrabble tiles. Some people have chosen this for their project, and as easy as these look, they are a little bit tedious when you're applying this. Now, my husband had, kind as he is, helps me with a lot of this stuff, the routering. He routered all these letters so that they're nice and easy to hang up. But keep in mind when you are applying the stencil that you want to make sure it's upright in the correct direction. So with that, that's where, again, tape measure comes in handy. Now I wanted to make sure that, because you're going to have I's, you're going to have M's, K's, L's, whatever the case may be, those letters, those straight lines, even if it's just a little bit off, you can tell, that it's just too kitty-wampus. It's you're gonna be looking at this letter that way and this letter that way. So you want to make sure that they're nice and straight. So with that, I would measure from here to here and measure from here to here, making sure that those are the same distance. From here to here and here to here, it's probably going to be taller in this section because of you want to offset to make room for that little number in the corner. So it's not going to be exactly from this edge to this edge. As you can see, it's kind of maneuvered this way, again offsetting for that corner number. So each number or each letter is going to be a little bit different. So I just wanted to touch on the Scrabble tiles, being that this is kind of a unique project. But any questions, feel free to ask me. I'd love to see the finished product of your projects. So send me pictures. I'll post them on my Facebook page if you're okay with that, at Envisions Artistic Workshop. And I'm hoping to get together with you all soon in a real classroom setting to create